Yes, these children have been doing really well this morning, and I really thank God for the work that is going on in their lives. Um, Many of you, yes, most of you will not know who I am. I'm a parent of SSCS. I hope that I could one day still be thought of as a student there, but no, that ship has long sailed. Um, this morning, I'm just going to be sharing with you just for a few minutes on the theme God's story. So we heard Archie share his story. We heard Avi share our story. And I just want to say that listening to Archie speak just now, I've known that dude, he was like down here. And listening to him speak and seeing him grow into who he is, awesome, impressive. But God's story. I'm going to be looking at it from two angles this morning, just two examples because I'm cognizant of the time constraints. But I'm sure that if you've been an Adventist for more than 2 weeks, you would have heard about a popular crew that was in the Bible called Daniel and the Three Hebrew Boys. If you've been an Adventist for more than a month, you've heard about these boys ending up in a furnace. You've heard about some giant statue that was made out of different types of metals. More than 3 months among us, and I'm sure you've heard about the beasts in the book of Daniel. You might not necessarily know the interpretation, which is cool, but you would have heard about those. And there are things like the 2300-day prophecy and the 70-week prophecy. Some of us have been in the church for decades and still don't quite have a handle on those. So that's not a problem, but you would have heard about them. So much of our Adventist doctrine and teachings, the things that set us apart from other Christian denominations, are derived from writings in the book of Daniel. But who was Daniel? Who were Daniel and the three friends that we spoke about? I'm going to ask real quickly, 3 people. Tell me something that you know about Daniel. Just shout it out. Shamar. Okay, the book of Daniel, where the king lost his mind for a second. Samantha? Daniel got to serve 4 different kings. Okay. Anybody else? One more. What do you think of when you hear of Daniel? Yes, young man. Say again? Daniel and the lion's den. Those are 3 landmark things about Daniel. But we also know that Daniel was captured from his home. He was enslaved by the king. He was deprived of leading a life of his own choosing. And we also know that he was generally unpopular, right? But there are some things that happened in the time of Daniel that were happening because of Daniel. We see that a nation came to know about a God that they didn't know about before. There was a pagan king that was converted to Christianity, and that's what Shamar just spoke of. We are also here today, millennia afterwards, or centuries afterwards. We have a greater understanding of world history because of the prophecies of Daniel. And we also know more about what is to come than what many are willing to accept because of Daniel. Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys changed the world for believers and non-believers. But how did this happen? Before I answer that, I'm going to pull on another example from the Bible, and this is coming from the New Testament. Archie mentioned Jesus in his speech, and I'm going to refer to Jesus as well. At the time that Jesus was on the earth, few believed that he was the Christ. Even fewer believed that he was any kind of divinity. But there is no documented pushback in the Bible where anyone accused him of not being a teacher. Jesus was accepted as a rabbi, as a teacher, without any doubt. Now, as you read the four Gospels, you will see Jesus taking every chance possible to offer an educational experience to those around him. Sometimes it didn't even seem to fit the moment. People would ask a simple question that could be answered with a yes or no, and he would find a way to make it an awesome educational session. Now, there is an underlying principle in both of the examples that I just referred to, and that principle is made clear in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 1 verse 17 says, "As for these four children," speaking about Daniel and his friends, "God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams." Daniel and his friends were educated by God. God is an educator at heart. And we see that demonstrated through Daniel, and we see that demonstrated in Jesus. Now, when we as a community, as individuals, as Adventists, when we embrace education, we embrace something that has heavenly origins. But this is where it gets deep. Education, the way God practices it, is never for self-elevation. God doesn't educate in order to lift people above anyone else. The two examples I shared earlier, none of them culminated in a single person rising to stardom. Daniel and his friends changed a nation. Jesus is still changing lives and saving lives. The apostles, Jesus' followers, taught all across their region and brought many to recognize their place in God's eyes. In every instance, it was never about elevating the teacher or the student. It was always about the love of God and our place by his side. Now, we are often presented with different concepts and definitions relating to education. I mean, in our very secular world, we learn about liberal education, where knowledge for its own sake, they say, just because it makes you a better person. There's also vocational education, where you're trained for industry. You're trained to do things in society. And then there's the societal focus of it all, just to help make the community a better place. But godly education is meant to bring us and others to a knowledge of understanding of who God is, who we are, and how we fit in his story. Christian education equips people, not just children, but people, with the tools to navigate this world while preparing these same people for citizenship in God's kingdom. And I know that the teachers of SSCS can attest to this. In teaching the children, you learn. In teaching the children and watching them grow, you grow. And that's what godly education does. Today, we turn our focus on the education arm of the SDA Church in Central Alberta, and specifically SSCS. The fine folks that we have entrusted with a large portion of our children's education, they are doing a great job. But it would be a big mistake for me to not point out the communal responsibility that we all bear as members of this church family and in our own family units. We are often affirmed that the home is the first school. And we would do well to keep that truth ever before us. Education begins at home. It continues in our school, and it is meant to bring us all the way through. Our every interaction with our children, with each other, is either making the family members fit for heaven or fit for the other place. There is no interdimensional existence. When all is said and done, we will be on one side or the other. Christian education, godly education, is the way to align our children and ourselves with God. It asserts us and inserts us into God's story. And it's a story that God has gone through many, or jumped over many hoops to write and to rewrite. May we ever be so mindful that every step we take and every instance that we interact with each other and with our children, we are etching our place in God's story. May a blessed Sabbath be yours.